Good test.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 17 of The Agency Way, a Room 214 weekly blab series to help marketers learn from subject matter experts within a marketing agency, in addition to guest thought leaders in business and worldwide. Room 214's Erica Stutzman is my co-host. Did I pronounce that correctly,
That's
Erica?
Perfect. Yeah, right. I never hear that, but thank you.
Erica puts up with pronunciations like Stutzman, but since I announce her name every week, I just want to make sure I get it right.
That's very nice.
I'm Jason Cormier, the co-founder of Room 214, a digital and social media marketing agency. And today we are super stoked to have our guest expert as Martha Brown. Martha is an account supervisor with Room 214. After consulting with small businesses and nonprofits on social media, she now helps companies like Western Union, Crock-Pot, Elevations Credit Union here more locally. She helps them to be more effective on social media, and more specifically, she helps them get real measurable results. So that's awesome. And Martha, thanks so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Cool. So we are experimenting with Blab in terms of just the new features, being able to drop in presentations like you see. And I don't believe that the recorded sessions will actually include this. So in the blog post that we do each week, which summarizes our Blab, we'll just make sure to embed the slide share. And it's only 3 slides anyway. And so when we get to it, we'll get to it. To start off, Martha, tell us a little bit about your background, how you got involved with social and digital marketing.
Sure. So I'm one of these digital native millennials, I think. I started on Facebook when you needed a college account to be on Facebook. I got my undergrad at the University of Texas at El Paso I started out in PR. So that was my first segue into Facebook. And it's funny because one of my really good friends who was in one of my business classes, we actually started talking on MySpace when MySpace used to be really popular. And that's how we got to be really great friends. But professionally, I've had so many sales and consulting gigs. I finally transitioned into nonprofit marketing with United Way of Brevard in Florida. And, United Way is an institution. They've been around for decades upon decades. And social is one of these things that was starting to come up a few years ago, especially in fundraising and in online fundraising. And it was just something that we hadn't gotten traction on. So I volunteered to set up our first social strategy. And we kind of set off with it. And we wanted to find a way to engage with donors year round, because if you're familiar with the United Way model, we usually only go to workplaces once a year. And so there was that lack of communication with our donors. And so we wanted to find a way to engage with them year round. And so that's how we got into Facebook, and we started posting all of these awesome photos from fundraising campaigns and from our nonprofit partners who were assisting and giving aid. And it was just a great way for us to share. And so we started growing our audience, and now they're at about double of what the audience was when I was there. And it's just been a really great way for them to communicate year round. So so after that, I started consulting with small businesses locally in Florida. And then I took my business full time once I moved here to Colorado. And then through some networking, I ended up at Room 214, and that's how we're here.
We're all here.
Nice.
Yeah.
So you have a lot of experience with Twitter, and we really wanted to kind of dive deep into Twitter today. What are some of the brands that you think are really hitting it? What do you admire on Twitter?
Yeah, Twitter is my favorite platform, to be honest with you. And if you go on my Twitter handle, you'll see that I'm wearing this awesome Twitter shirt for my professional headshots. And I really just love Twitter so much. It's a great way to find the people that are talking about your brand, that are talking about topics that are of interest to you. It's a great way to start building relationships and communication. And it's also because of the immediacy of the network, you can test out a lot of different content and put out a lot of really fun stuff, and just kind of see what content identifies with your audience. So couple of really great brands that I think are doing it right. Denny's is always called out. Denny's is so funny on their Twitter feed. They recently did this little image of these little emojis, and it was eggs and coffee, and they made it into like a little DNA thing, and it said our DNA. And it was just a great way to use emojis, which are really popular on Twitter and with millennials, and to really put a fun spin on their content. And they do that all the time. On the B2B side, a couple of brands that are doing it right. General Electric, and they are huge, and they touch so many different business units. They do healthcare, they do tech, they do renewable energy, they do all kinds of things. And the way that they've been able to use Twitter effectively is that they've really focused on content buckets. And so when they're talking about each of these different topics, it still feels on brand and it still feels genuine, because they've identified sort of what that messaging is. And it can be hard for somebody that has a global brand like that and that touches on so many different points, but they're really doing it right. And I think another one on the B2B side, and especially for people that like marketing, like all of us here on this lab, is eMarketer. They do a really great job of data visualization. They put out a lot of different cool stats and graphs and that sort of thing. But one of the things that still really works on Twitter is Twitter chats. And they're doing a webinar and then encouraging their webinar participants to share little nuggets of wisdom or quotes or anything like that on Twitter. So they're taking that webinar participation onto Twitter. And it's great especially for those of us that haven't been able to join, because we're able to sort of get the key pieces of information, and they're encouraging other people to participate. And of course, they're doing that as a sort of lead generation technique, because they're trying to find the people that are interested in their products and their services, creating a really great chat around that topic, and allowing them to communicate and to create a conversation.
I love that. I hate to interrupt, but I love that you're talking about the engagement after a webinar, because I think lead gen obviously is the most important thing that we're all trying to do. But how many of us engage with a webinar after we're done with it, or talk to the other people who might be on it? I mean, it's almost, you sort of do the webinar, check the box, you've done it, you move on. But having a conversation with the other people who are there that's such a cool idea.
Yeah, absolutely. And, people are sharing little slides and that sort of thing from the webinar. And, clearly it's easy for eMarketer, because most of the people that are participating are marketing people. And so they are digital natives. They are on Twitter. But you can do that with most businesses. A lot of really great global nonprofits are doing that as well.
Cool. Well, Martha, first of all, I appreciate the examples, and I know we can actually embed some links, if not on this blab, later on after we take down this SlideShare deck. We can do it in the blog post follow up. But for the purpose of very much conforming to the intention of do's and don'ts with this blab, I would love for you to just break down for us maybe a top 3, bottom 3. So what are 3 best practices for brands on Twitter? And let's just say, what would you say the 3 biggest mistakes are?
Sure, and we can use our screen share for this as well,
nice.
Our slide share.
Can I advance the slide?
Yes, okay. Please, Vanna, please
right.
Advance my slide. So best practices. Best practices, using a branded hashtag. It is the easiest way to track conversations. You can start getting results for campaigns. We recently did this for Western Union. We were highlighting their commitment to education across the globe. And so we used the hashtag #AdForBetter. And it was so easy to track conversations and to track the volume of increased buzz around their brand. So it can be something, it can be a campaign name, it can include your company name, or it can just be, whatever fits the objective that you're trying to meet. But branded hashtags is really a must. Try to stay away from things that are like hashtag coffee or hashtag money, because there's really no tracking that can happen there.
Right. I was going to ask you just when you get into just the strategy around what branded hashtag you will use. I assume that you're doing some level of search, come up with a hashtag you like, you go ahead and plug it in and search and just see, is there any existing conversation around that hashtag? Is that accurate?
Exactly. Yeah. You want to start working off of a clean hashtag. So something that hasn't been used before, because that'll allow you to track those conversations. For Western Union, Ed for Better, they use it in several of their communications, but this was really our first targeted use of this hashtag. And so it was really easy to see a little bit of conversation for the remaining of the year. And then in March, it just blew up, and we encouraged their charity partners as well to use that hashtag. And so I really got a lot of traction out of that.
Okay. So no dirty hashtags.
Copy edit it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, for most brands. So the next one is using lists. Using lists can make it so much easier to find what you're looking for, to connect with influencers, to connect with people that are already talking about your brand. It's really the only way that you can sort of keep your head above water with Twitter, because there's so many people talking around the clock. And so it can be overwhelming. And that's one of the great ways to use this Twitter list. The one thing I will say about Twitter lists is that it's not a once and done kind of thing. It's not like, hey, I found 20 influencers and these are the people that I'm going to track conversations with. You need to consistently update those lists and start putting people in them, so you can track conversations that are happening around your brand or around your business objectives.
Martha, I know with lists, and maybe you can talk about this a little bit, some of us are invited to lists, and you can go in there and you can see people that have actually subscribed to the list versus people that are just part of the list. And I'm just wondering, do you have any commentary on that? What's the deal with that?
Yeah, subscribing to lists is really great. So Social Media Marketing World just happened a couple of weeks ago, and I had the opportunity to attend 2 years ago. And that was one of the things that I did, is I subscribed to all of these lists so that I could keep track of conference attendees and what people were talking about. And so that for events and conferences and that sort of thing, it's a great way to find other people that are talking about your topic. I would say that if you are creating a list, make sure that when it is public, you're creating a great title for it, because people can see that. So don't, make some sort of code or whatever. Maybe it's if we're using Social Media Marketing World, and it's Social Media Marketing World thought leaders, or something that the other person would find flattering to be added to.
Cool.
And the last best practice is to be personable. Twitter's strength is in creating conversations and retweets. So, scheduling is great for people like me and our account teams, because you can, schedule out a bunch of content, but you still have to be part of that conversation. You can't just blast your news releases and your press releases and expect that you're going to gain a lot of traction. You have to start creating those relationships online. So make sure that you're tracking people that are resharing your content, people that are talking about your topics, and then do a quick search if you're talking about money, or you're talking about renewable energy. Search for people that are talking about the same thing. The last thing that I'll say about this, and because we use Twitter so much for Western Union, Western Union CEO has done an amazing job of personifying this, of being personable. He is a refugee himself, and so he talks a lot about the refugee crisis, the European refugee crisis, and he encourages us to build content around that, and he also does that on his own. And so it can be a little scary to sort of draw your line in the sand online and say, this is what I believe. But you'll see that you'll get so much more engagement if you're your authentic self.
So when you talk about being personable, really, what I'm picking up is it sounds like it's really kind of two things. One is just the nature of the messaging. and it being like real versus, broadcasting links. But it sounds like the other piece to it is actually responding to people and not just having a clear message on an opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. You've hit the nail on the head. Make sure that you're responding back to people that are talking about you, even if those things are not positive. It's what this method was, what this platform was used for. But yeah, just be authentic. Don't just tweet out what you think people want to hear. Tweet out who you really are.
Cool. All right. I'm moving off of best practices. I'm going to the don'ts.
Oh no.
Don't do that.
Don't do that. Don't do any of these. So this kind of goes back into what we were talking about with best practices. So worst practices, auto response, just stop using them. And this happens when you follow someone and you immediately get an inbox message and it says, hey, check out our new tool or check out this PDF. It's so annoying and it feels like you're just trying to sell me something and you're not trying to build a relationship with me. And it's never going to work. It's never going to come off as, oh, this is the resource that I needed, because people aren't soliciting it. Find a way you can still do that, but you need to build a relationship first and make sure that what you're providing is of value to the other person and that you're not just spamming their inbox, because then they'll just ignore you.
Sure. So what about the auto response that just says, I'm honored you've followed me. Thank you so much. Happy Sunday. What do you think about that?
Again, that's still not being personable, right? That's a very blanket message. If you were to follow me, I would say, hey, thanks for the follow, Jason. Tell me a little bit more about Room 214. What kind of clients do you work with? And start a conversation the way that you would at a networking event. I use Twitter a lot for networking, and so you wouldn't just, say that to a person in real life. So just, the way that you would network in real person is the way that you should network on Twitter.
Sure. And to your point about networking on Twitter, and I love this, by the way, are you looking to really carry the conversation outside of Twitter, whether that's via email or LinkedIn or another platform that might be a little more, better than 140 characters at a time?
I mean, honestly, it depends. Going back to Western Union, the CIO has been really active on Twitter, and most of his conversations have been on Twitter. So he's participated in the CIO chat a couple of times, and really it's just to connect with other people, try to gain their ideas, and talk about different things that are happening in his area of business. And that's it. There's no hard sell. There's nothing else. He just wants to connect with other people. And so I guess it depends on your objective. I would say for lead gen, then yes, you ultimately do want to take that off of Twitter and either go on LinkedIn or start building an email list or something of the sort that does allow for longer communication.
Cool.
So we had a question that rolled in from Keely. If you're personally responding to tweets and follows, how much time should you plan to spend on dailies focusing on your Twitter account?
Yeah, I mean, again, it depends on your objective. And I would say, if this is not a sales generating tactic for you, then I would say spend no more than 10, 15 minutes or, whatever your schedule allows. If it is part of a targeted lead gen campaign, or you're looking to build relationships with people that may be interested in your product or anything like that, then I would devote some serious time to it because that is ultimately a business goal, right? I would say maybe depending on the volume of your tweets, I would say maybe start with an hour and see how it goes and see if you start getting traction. And just like with any other business tactic, if it's not working for you, then spend a little less time on it and figure out where you need to spend more time. So I think we left off on the third one.
No, we're talking about the platform. You talk about the push. We talked about this a little bit with the do's, that you don't just push stuff out there, but explain a little bit what you mean about the push platform.
Yeah, so you see this a lot on a lot of big brands that aren't devoting resources to social media, that are just, sort of, let's just post our press releases up there and just call it good. And it's such a push marketing, and it's not pull, which is sort of what social media is geared to do. So you just kind of sound like a recording, really. It's not personable. It sounds like you're just trying to push your message out, and you're not tracking how it goes. You're not tracking conversations. You just want to get stuff out, and people will see through that. Okay. And you're starting to see sort of the brands that aren't growing their Twitter followers or any sort of a platform following from people that do that.
Mm-hmm. And then your last don't?
Yeah, last don't, automatic posting tools. So you can schedule content ahead of time. It's the only way that you will create a consistent platform, a consistent messaging platform. But you still need to react to trends. You still need to respond to people. You still need to be engaged with your community. So if you can schedule stuff, great, but still sort of track the conversation. And then also don't just automatically post your Facebook post to your Twitter, to your Pinterest, to your Instagram, to everything. Every message platform has a different audience, has a different way of communicating. And with Twitter, more than anything, you'll see that when people are just cross-posting their Facebook posts, it'll start with this really long, drawn-out message, and then it'll just say ... Mm-hmm. Because the entire message won't fit on Twitter's 140-character platform. So really start tailoring your message to each platform if you're not already doing that.
Very cool. So I'm going to have a question before my next question, and that is from Keely also. If you're starting your company's Twitter account, how do you begin your post? How do you get started, basically?
Yeah. So I would say before you even log onto the platform or before you even do anything, figure out your strategy. What are you trying to do there? Are you just trying to create conversations? Are you, who's your audience? Who are you trying to engage with? Set out a plan, when we talked about scheduling, how many resources are going into this? How much time are you devoting into this? And then I would start building out content buckets, which we do often for our clients. So what does our audience want to hear about? Do they want to hear about international money transfers? Do they want to hear about the global economy? And then that's a great way to start thinking about what kind of content can I create that's not just press releases. Mm-hmm. And who are the people that are talking about this? And how can I start my own tribe and people that are talking about what I'm talking about? So I would say don't jump on the platform right away. Figure out if it's a good fit, if it's going to achieve what you want it to do, and then start setting out and just start following people and start communicating with people and being personable. Just the way that you grow your personal circle of friends, it's the same thing on Twitter. Just start talking to people.
Yeah, I think, even just setting up the profile, making sure that, your Twitter profile is dialed in terms of who you are, what you do, ultimately what you've got to give. Mm-hmm. And I know, to somewhat paraphrase Zig Ziglar, this is a guy who says you can have whatever you want in the world by helping other people get whatever they want in the world. And so it's the idea is really approach the platform with a posture of giving value or adding value, and really go in with the idea that you're going to help people, which is a completely different posture than just like, I'm going to broadcast who I am. And I think I've got valuable information for everybody. So here are my links. And, certainly nothing wrong with, doing that. But I think first things first, and to your point about starting conversations, following people, I think any time that you reply to somebody's tweet, you're actually part of a pretty small crowd. And so, you get noticed pretty quickly. You look at somebody, even like Joel Comm, for example. This guy's got, 340,000 Twitter followers. And every once in a while, I'll head in there and reply to one of his tweets, and, he'll notice, he'll reply back. And so it just goes to show you, there's a lot going on Twitter, and maybe there's not as much conversation as there should be in terms of just people replying and not just moving on and posting.
Yeah, absolutely. And another influencer that does a great job of that is Ted Rubin, and his whole message is return on relationship. So it's not return on investment, it's return on relationship. And if you tweet him pretty much anytime, he'll respond to you. And this guy has done social engagement and huge media campaigns for brands like American Express. And so, he knows his stuff, and he will still talk to you and create a real conversation with you. It really does go a long way.
Very cool. So, Erica, if you've got another question, feel free to ask it. I'm going to see if I can actually input the link that Martha had shared on one of the examples of a brand who's doing it right.
Try the Taco Bell one, because it's a moving one, and I want to see if it plays on here. But while he's doing that, Martha, could you tell us a little bit? So one of the news media is always talking about how Twitter is not finding new users, basically. It's got a lot of existing users, but the growth model has sort of stalled, according to the media.
Yeah.
How does Twitter engage with these folks who aren't using it yet? Where's the future headed, do you think?
Yeah, I think things like, oh, I'm hearing an echo. I think things like Snapchat are sort of changing the digital landscape, and you're starting to see platforms like Facebook give preference to live video. And actually, the people that did it first were really Twitter. You started out with Periscope and with Meerkat, and Periscope is still very much alive and kicking. And then you have a platform like this, like Blab, which is sort of like Periscope, but with a bunch of different people. So I think that's really the only way that Twitter will be able to grow their audience and to continue to attract new users, is to stay up with the trends and in content, and to see what people are demanding from this platform. Again, this that we're doing now, the live chat and everything, it's just a reflection of how people want to be connected. And now they don't just want to be connected through a tweet, they want to be connected in real life, and they want to talk to you and ask you questions. And so that's, and you're starting to see that with the huge growth in Snapchat. So, Facebook has figured out a really great way to engage with people on a daily basis. It is literally the first thing that I do when I wake up is I check my Facebook feed. Twitter hasn't done that, and they need to find a way in order to be part of our daily lives in that same way. It may not get there, but what other ways can they be different than the other platforms? And what are their strengths? What are their benefits? And this is definitely one of them. So I think live video has really sort of allowed Twitter to at least grow at the rate that they are.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. And so I tried to bring in some of the links and I guess there's video and audio. And so Blab doesn't support that yet, but they said they're working on it.
Yeah, they're working on a lot of new things, and a lot of people are turning to this like they were turning to podcasting 5 years ago. So I'm really excited for Blab and for this platform.
Yeah, cool. What are some of the platforms that work with Twitter that users can employ to really max out their Twitter experience or even their reach?
Yeah, so the ones that I mentioned, Periscope and Blab, these are great ways to build relationships. And again, go back to those content themes. Go back to what the people that are following you and that are giving you a heart or that are giving you a retweet. What are they talking about? Because then you'll be talking about things that are interesting and that are useful to them. And, just start testing stuff out. Room 214 started testing this out, and we've had some great success with it. But yeah, if you're not currently hosting your own Blab, or if you haven't tried periscoping through one of your live events or through something that you think would be interesting to your audience, just start testing it out.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. And just, even though the topic is Twitter, I know you did mention Snapchat. And so tell us a little about what are you doing on Snapchat, Martha?
I'm still trying to figure out what it is, honestly. But I am starting to get snaps from some of my friends, and I just figured out how to use filters yesterday, and it was 420, and there were a bunch of really interesting filters, and I know that there was some online conversation around that, so I don't want to single them out. But the thing about Snapchat is that it's such a great way to connect with people right now. I haven't really found a brand that's really getting it, that's doing it right. All they're doing is recording videos and putting them up, but it just doesn't feel like a fit yet. So I don't have any Snapchat case studies for you yet. And I think it's just because as marketers, we've been delayed in jumping on the platform. And I think that's a good thing. Users still need to figure out how they're using it, and then we can see as brands how to use it. But geofilters is something that is of interest to brands, especially brands that do live events or brands that are really well known in a city or in a community. I've used the Boulder geofilter several times, and I was able to use a New Mexico geofilter when I was down there last weekend. So yeah, there's a lot of new things that are coming up, but right now, personally, I'm using it sort of, kind of, not really all the time. Teenagers are using it all day, every day, on a consistent basis. I'm just not there yet. I'm still an Instagram and Facebook person because I am an older millennial. So
yeah, that's funny. I mean, my 16-year-old, that's really my Snapchat activity is with him. And he's like, old people on Snapchat, cool.
Yeah.
So
yeah, definitely. I definitely feel old when I'm in there.
Yeah, well, you won't for long, that's for sure. I mean, that is definitely the momentum, in Snapchat. There's a whole other conversation we'll save for a later time about that. And I know just even when working with Forever 21, it was early stage getting them on Snapchat and, like 18,000 followers in no time. It was maybe even the first day. But even then, when we were working with them, it was, we didn't know what was going on. It was just kind of like, okay, this looks to be like a next social platform you should get on. So I think we all still have a lot to learn.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're starting to get inquiries from customers as to how to use it. And so we'll start testing out some things and looking for those case studies and, just kind of seeing how it goes.
So do you think the Twitter format is ever going to expand past the 140 characters?
I really hope not. And it was a discussion. It was a discussion, about a month ago, and people were just vehemently against it. And I think it goes against, what the platform was created to do. Create short messages that are quick, that are real time. Often it's one of the first places that you find out about news. And so I think making it longer, they've already made their direct messages longer, which nobody was excited about, because to go back to those autoresponders, it just makes those autorespond messages even longer. So I really hope that they don't change their 140 character, just because that is one of the key elements to this platform. It's one of the things that makes it Twitter. And I would hate to see it not be Twitter anymore.
So, I'm glad you brought that up, Erica, because I'm kind of with you. And I agree, Martha. I think there's something that is super interesting about how your brain works when you're limited to 140 characters. You have to be concise. You think about the CEO of Western Union, for example. He's probably pretty happy that if he's got something to say, there is a platform out there that'll allow him to say it in 140 characters, and he can get a message across, and it doesn't have to be this expectation around something much longer. Mm-hmm. And so in a world today where being concise seems to be more valuable, mm-hmm. I think, Twitter's great for that. And I guess the only other thing I would add to that is, from a business perspective, Twitter has this whole data services component of its company. And so I can only imagine that when Twitter entertains the idea of enabling more content, whether, I can't remember what the discussion was, 300 characters or what it was. But there's an advantage to them if they allow that, because now all of these tools that have licensed the fire hose from Twitter potentially have a lot more data to mine And that means a lot more insights from online conversations because people are going to go into more depth. So, you know, from a business perspective, I'm sure I got to believe they've looked at that and thought it would be to our advantage to open this up more. But from a user experience perspective, obviously people are like, no.
Yeah, for sure. And you would hope that people would be tweeting deeper things and not just making long drawn out statements. And so that's, you know, I don't have full faith that that would actually happen. I think people would just use full sentences instead of shortening the characters.
Yeah, it'd become an SEO game and people would be like, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, cool. Well, hey, we're wrapping up here on our time. Martha, thanks so much again for joining us today. Super appreciative that you could do that. Eric, I'd love for you to go ahead and close us out with the final three.
You bet. So the book of the week is by William Ury, and it is The Power of the Positive No, which is, I think, it's a really interesting book, and it's really about negotiations and how to get from no to yes, and how a lot of people get the no and they just kind of stop there, and it's how to negotiate with people and kind of work together to get that no to a yes. And I think it's great, and it's also kind of funny because I think as grown-ups we have a very, like, getting a no seems really harsh, but it's really one of the first words that we all say as human beings. So it's ma, then da. Then no is the first thing to say as a grown-up, and it's really hard to take as a grown-up. And so I think it was a very interesting language lesson for me, I thought. The quote of the week is from, where am I? Seth Godin, the best-selling author. If you don't have time to do it right, what makes you think you'll have time to do it over? Which I think is a good lesson. And my nonprofit shout-out of the week is in honor of Earth Day, which is tomorrow. So if people want to think about giving to something that benefits Earth Day, think about the Nature Conservancy. They're at nature.org. They work to conserve the lands and waters on which all life depends.
Very cool. Very cool.
Great one.
Well, thanks again, everybody, for joining us today. Just waiting for the echo to go away. I know Blab's actually done a lot of work to remedy that. As a reminder, you can follow us on Twitter at room_214. You can also subscribe to our email newsletter by going to room214.com/blog. You can message me at Jason Cormier if you'd like to be a guest on our show. Our weekly series continues every Thursday at 11:30 a.m. Mountain Time. On behalf of everyone at Room 214, thank you for joining us for another episode of The Agency Way. And I'm going to go ahead and hit the pause button here, but if anybody wants to jump on, wants to ask questions or just be part of the conversation, please feel free to do so. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thanks.